Welcome to the March update at Galileo Capital. It's been a heck of a time, I guess, the financial markets, budget, Greylisting, there's so much to talk about. So I brought in the heavy artillery. Stienemarié, thank you so much for braving this conversation. It's very nice to have you with us.
Thanks, Warren. Good to be here.
So, Stienemarié, I guess let's talk about the budget. It's always a big item in the financial year, and we're just past it now, and I think there's quite a lot to focus on. So maybe from your perspective, just the impact on us as individuals, the personal finance impacts of the budget?
Okay, so from a personal finance viewpoint, the income tax brackets have been adjusted with expected inflation of 4.9%. So that's the brackets, the rebates, and the tax thresholds. Then on the retirement side, the retirement lump sum withdrawal tax tables has also been adjusted, and that's with 10%. So that is quite a big adjustment there. So for clients that's close to retirement or at retirement, just to note that tax-free portion that you are able to take now is increased to 550,000 Rand. So just speak to your tax planner and your financial advisor there if you're close to retirement.
And that's just on retirement, yeah? That's not about cashing in early or something? That's simply for
so just on retirement, but for pre- and post-retirement withdrawals. And then load shedding has a big impact on us, and you will talk more about that later on, but there is now a tax rebate for solar panels. So that is just for the rooftop solar panels, not for inverters and batteries, and it's only for the next year, so starting 1st of March for the next year going forward, and that's 25% on the panels up to a maximum of 15,000 Rand. So that is a nice score there. And then just tax proposals that's still in line. The two-part tax system is aimed to start on the 1st of March 2024. And the aim of that is just to break down the retirement assets into two parts. So there will be a savings pot and a retirement pot. And then individuals will have access to that savings pot pre-retirement. So for emergencies and things like that, there will be more access to that savings pot, and it will be subject to tax. So we'll see how that plays out, but we do see that as a positive. As things stand now, there's no concerns there, and it does give more flexibility to individuals. So if you wanted to maybe discuss more of the budget and Eskom side of things.
Yeah, I think it's maybe just to your last point around the retirement reform, because I think it's a long-standing issue. You know, it's been debated for, I think, over a decade. And if you remember, we had that swear word phrase, prescribed assets. It was kind of floated about, and everyone was freaking out that our money was going to be kind of targeted for specific projects and just being used badly by a corrupt government. And if we look at what's actually happened in retirement funds in the last few years, they've increased the offshore allocation, so there's more flexibility, and now this two-part system where they're allowing some access to retirement money, which I think is a very positive thing. So actually, for people that are worrying about putting money into RAs and into pension and provident funds, what this is telling you is that the trends, not the news, the real trends, the mechanical things are very positive and aimed at more flexibility, encouraging saving, and not taking our money and allocating it somewhere dodgy. So I think it's a good news. Just talking about Eskom, I think it's a really important point. We've been waiting for quite some time to see how government is going to solve the debt burden that Eskom has. So Eskom sitting at over 400 billion rands worth of debt, and it's completely unsustainable. And so the reform in terms of how is Eskom going to deal with that, or sorry, not Eskom, how Treasury is going to deal with that, was a key outstanding factor that needed to be dealt with, because if they were going to do it in a bad way, then it could have really hurt the South African fiscus, and that could have been bad for all of us. What they've ended up doing is saying that government will take on about 60 or 65% of Eskom's outstanding debt, but it's not a blank check. And I think that's a very important point. What Treasury is saying is that they will allocate that money to Eskom in 3 tranches over 3 years, based on very specific performance criteria, and very specific conditions have to be met. And some of those are, in my view, privatization through the back door. One of the things is that some of the existing coal power plants need to be concessioned, that was their word, concessioned to the private sector. And so that means monetizing dead assets in power plants that are not performing, and it sounds to me, because they're not explaining it in detail, that the private sector needs to take over some of those plants and then run them more efficiently and pay Eskom rent, I guess, or utilization fee. I think that's a very good point. Also creating the back door for private sector to get involved in the transmission grid. One of the tragedies we have now is we've got so much sun, so much wind, and some sectors or some provinces, the grid is at capacity. And that's really a problem now. So allowing the private sector to invest in the grid, to expand the grid, means more renewable energy much more quickly. And I think that that's a major score as well. So around the Eskom resolution of the debt problem and how it's going forward, I'm very comfortable that we're doing it in the right way. I think it is clever. It is sad that it's adding a lot of debt to the country, but the truth is, and the finance minister made the point, the government was underwriting most of that debt anyway. So when the ratings agencies were looking at South Africa, they would say, well, that debt that Eskom is guaranteeing is actually government debt anyway. And so it does give Eskom breathing room now to buy more diesel when things are going wrong, and certainly that it can now start to maintain the existing power plants, hopefully more effectively. So I think that that's very good news. For the rest, what's interesting is that the budget on a national level, we're actually getting our debt a little bit more under control. It's still bad, it's still scary, but that graph is not doing this. It's sort of turning over and it's getting a bit better. And from that perspective, I'm happy. They talk about a primary surplus, I think is the phrase. In other words, if you ignore how much the country is paying on interest, we will be earning more money than we are spending. And that's a very good sign, because it means we're going to try and make a bit of a dent in the debt burden for the country. Greylisting has happened. It was something that we kind of spoke about for the last few months, that it was probably going to happen. It's here now. The press is correctly outraged by this, but I think the reality is that it was a known. We were going to get this. It was a hope that we wouldn't get greylisted. I think it's important to know it's not the same as a death sentence. What it means is that the country is under review. We will be subject to enhanced due diligence when we're doing business globally, and that means the cost of banking will go up, the cost of business will go up. But we can get out of this, and it'll probably take 2 to 3 years for South Africa to get off the grey list again, and that's an important point. It's not an endless spiral where we don't break that cycle. So I think that from that perspective, I mean, it's not good news, it's more bad news at the wrong time, but I do think we can see a lot of action already taken to kind of solve the problem. So I think from that perspective, I'm okay with it. I wish we would just get some more positive news. I think for our clients that are watching, you know, one of the things I wanted to say is we're in a time where South Africa is really dealing with an incredible amount of bad news. Some of that bad news is causing good action. In other words, the reforms at Eskom, the reforms of the whole grid, the involvement of the private sector in Transnet, all of those things are very positive. All of those things are actions that should have been taken 5 or 10 years ago. But now that government's left with no other option, they're taking the right action because there is just nothing else for them to do. So I think that we will get a resolution to the power problems for the country in by about June, July next year. That won't be because Eskom's fixed. It'll be because that's when private power starts producing on a measurable, noticeable scale. And for all of us that will, you know, already have solar on our roofs, you know, the other thing that's happened in the budget was that private business were given a massive tax break to really, you know, add a lot of renewable energy, not just solar, all renewable energy, you know, to the grid and to their own use. And I think that tax break is significant. So I think there is some good stuff happening there, Stienemarié. And I feel we need to know that maybe this is the kind of bottom. We're scraping the barrel now. This is really a tough time to be a South African. But I do think these reforms are starting to bear fruit, and we will see those reforms unfolding probably by the end of this year, beginning of next year. We start to see some more and more positive news. And as I say, by July, August next year, hopefully we start to see more and more private power making a meaningful difference to the country. So I think all in, it's tough now. You know, markets are tough. You know, the JSE is not doing well. The Rand's struggling a bit as well. But this could well be that last sort of real kind of darkest before dawn scenario. I hope that we're not just overly optimistic here and praying for no good outcome. That's actually never going to happen. I think that we're kind of through the worst now. From your perspective, anything I've missed or anything else you want to say?
No, thanks, Warren. I agree with you. I think there are some problems and there's no quick fixes to these problems, but it does seem like policies are sitting in place to put us on the right path, and we just hope that the implementation then follows on that.
We are a resilient country, and we do make a plan. We do find ways to solve our problems, and I feel the private sector here is being given a bit more scope to solve a lot of these issues, and that's really the thing that gives me hope. I'm not banking on our government doing anything in the state-owned enterprises. I am banking on our private sector to solve our problems. So until next month, I think stay the course. Please don't panic. We are panicking on your behalf when we need to and making plans where we need to, and we will keep you posted as things go.
Great. Thanks for your time, Warren.